and welcome back to Bookish Theories. In today's video, I would like to talk about BTS's concept photos for Map of the Soul 7, focusing on the first two versions and what they can tell us about the upcoming album. Now, the first set of concept photos is called Desire for Perfection and portrays the boys in a shabby room dressed in white and standing around a hall filled with darkness. Right off the bat, this should give us some clues about what's going on. The boys here are portraying white swans, the persona they transform into when they are in front of a camera. On a general level, the white swan is a symbol of beauty, purity, and dignity, an ideal of perfection that was also at the core of Black Swan, a movie that heavily inspired the concept up to this point. Much like in the film, the white swans the boys are portraying here are the exact opposite of the black swans we see in the second concept photos. That is their shadow, the animalistic and primitive side of them that is lingering in the unconscious. The second set here is titled Unquenchable Thirst, and this makes sense because in this case, their shadow represents the darker side of themselves and their life. The same desire mentioned in the first version that is twisted and distorted into something negative. You see, much like I anticipated in my video about Black Swan and Fake Love, the two sets here are showing us two different perspectives of the same idea. If we merge the two versions together, we can see that their design is very similar to Carl Jung's Map of the Soul. So we can say that they are a representation of their life and their identity. But while the first set focuses on the desire for perfection that led them to over-identify with the persona, the second portrays the unquenchable thirst at the core of this desire. Much like the persona and the shadow are two sides of the same individual, the idea of perfection and their thirst for it go hand in hand in their journey to become the people they are today. In the first version, this dichotomy was already foreshadowed in the contrast between the boys and their surroundings. The room they are portrayed in looks very similar to the set design they used in Fake Love. And this is important because back then, the focus was on the same desire for perfection that pushed them to transform into dolls. While they present themselves as an ideal of perfection, the reality where this transformation took place is anything but perfect. And the first version is meant to portray this idea by also focusing on the darkness that their sacrifice implied. Their effort to transform into white swans, that is, into an ideal of perfection, allowed the shadow to creep out. And in the second version, we see what their shadows actually look like. Now, the second concept photos are quite interesting because the set design here seems to have been inspired by a specific passage that can be found in Carl Jung's Red Book. In the book, there is an entry called Descent into Hell, where Jung recounts a nightmare where he got a glimpse of the inner things he hides inside of himself. This is basically a fancy way of defining the unconscious, and in this case, is unconscious as the shape of a dark cave whose bottom is covered in black water. In his dream, Jung basically falls into the hell he has inside of himself, where he is surrounded by shadows and he hears the screams of an army roaring like lions. This obviously terrifies him, but he also realizes that he has to go deeper because underwater there is a red stone that turns into a red sun that becomes blood. Now, in the photos, we don't see anything like that yet. But the point here is that much like what happens in Jung's dream, the boys have to go deeper into themselves in order to see the light again. This is the same concept used in Dante's Inferno, for instance, where Dante literally has to go through the 9 circles of hell before seeing the stars again. This is important because according to Jung, an artist has to go through the inferno of his passions in order to master the creative fire he has inside of himself. In order to achieve balance within yourself, you have to face the darker side of you, because this is the only way you can learn to control it and become the best version of yourself possible. This is also coherent with the archetype of the hero's journey that I already mentioned in some of my past videos. And sure enough, it is the same idea that was portrayed in the Make It Right animation. Similarly to what happens in the photos, where we see the white swan personas next to a dark hall and the black swan shadows lingering in a cave, in Make It Right we saw the hero on the edge of a hall and a dragon emerging from a cave. This is the same story told in a different way, but back in Make It Right, the hero actually slays the dragon as he is engulfed in the red light. These parallels basically imply that this is a journey that has been going on for a very long time and that is being told from different perspectives. And the poses the boys have in the second version seem to confirm this as well. Now, with the exception of Hobie, who is reaching for the light, possibly because of his connection with the ego, the other members are crouching in a pose that closely recall the statue that we see in Blood, Sweat and Tears. This is because the statue and the black swans represent the same thing. They are the shadow, the darkest part of ourselves that we want to hide and that we tend to repress. Back in Blood, Sweat and Tears, the concept was heavily inspired by Herman Hesse's Damien, a coming-of-age story about a boy named Sinclair that back then was played by Jin. At the beginning, Sinclair sees the world divided in two. There is the world of light, which he identifies in himself and in the sanctity of his house, and the world of darkness, which is the outer world that scares him but also attracts him. This separation is eventually compromised when he meets Damien, a boy that questions his beliefs and that in the video was played by V. As time goes by, Sinclair becomes obsessed by Damien, because Damien represents the temptation he wants to resist but cannot help but feeling attracted to. In the story, Damien becomes a reflection of everything Sinclair is ashamed of wanting. He becomes his shadow, basically. And the point of the story is to show how Sinclair learns to come to terms with this darkness and accept it as part of himself. Sinclair's journey towards self-awareness ends the moment he kisses Damien, which in the novel is also compared to a statue. In Blood, Sweat and Tears, the statue represents V, and the kiss is the symbol of Jin falling into temptation and finally accepting the world of light and the world of darkness as both part of his identity. This is why back then V was portrayed as a fallen angel. On a metaphorical level, he was the embodiment of temptation, a character that seduces his friend and draws him away from the light. And this is important because in the concept photos, Jungkook not only is the only one without wings, but also the one who mirrors the statue the most. This could imply that once again, we could be seeing the same story but with a change of perspective. Maybe this time Jungkook will play the tempter, and if we look at the first version, their poses may imply that V could be the one who gets tempted. Now, out of all the members, V is the only one who has his back to the camera. While his outfit almost looks like the tail of a white swan, his pose mirrors Jin's, so this could imply that a transformation will actually take place. Maybe this time he will be the innocent one. He could be the one who falls victim of his shadow and therefore the one who will be taken over the most. But for now, we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please think about liking and subscribing. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye!